What does the USS Arizona battleship that was sunk at Pearl Harbor and Elvis Presley have in common? Stick around to find out. You've probably heard this said about December 7th, 1941. It's the day that will live in infamy. That famous line was uttered by then President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt. He was specifically referring to the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese that resulted in 2,403 being killed. Of those killed, 1,177 were from the USS Arizona, which sunk to the bottom of the harbor. Entombed on that ship were some 900 sailors that remain there to this day. The attack on that December morning would be the jumping-off point for America's direct involvement in World War II. By the 1950s, the war was in America's rearview mirror, and the country was experiencing a baby and economic boom. It was during that time that Admiral Arthur William Radford had the idea to somehow memorialize those 1,177 souls lost aboard the Arizona. Radford, a naval aviator with over 40 years of service, believed that the men of the Arizona should never be forgotten. So, in 1950, Admiral Radford set out to honor and memorialize those men by building a platform near the Arizona, equipped with a flagpole and a plaque that would be affixed to the USS Utah. Each day, to honor those men of the Arizona, a flag was raised and lowered. And with her oil tears still rising to the harbor surface, a more formal and permanent memorial was proposed in 1958. The Arizona Memorial Commission was formed and brought together a variety of people whose united goal was to honor those killed aboard the Arizona and to create a lasting tribute so that they would never be forgotten. On December 3rd, 1958, Medal of Honor recipient and USS Arizona survivor, Rear Admiral Samuel Fuqua, was featured on the show This Is Your Life. In the show, host Ralph Edwards would surprise his guests and then take them through a retrospective of their lives. It was during that show that Admiral Fuqua announced to the world that an effort was underway to build a memorial, and afterwards, the show's host encouraged Americans to contribute what they could to the effort. Born on January 8, 1935 in Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis Presley's musical career kicked off in 1954. He would appear in several nationally broadcast television shows in the 2 years that followed. But it was his appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on September 9, 1956, that introduced him to a wider audience and served to skyrocket him to fame. So significant was his appearance on that show that in 2006, the History Channel selected it as one of the 10 days that unexpectedly changed America. Elvis Presley would become a rock star, a movie star, and one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century. And he was dubbed the King of Rock and Roll. When Rear Admiral Fuqua made his appearance on the television show This Is Your Life and announced the plans for the Arizona Memorial, Elvis Presley, now Private First Class Presley, was with the 3rd Armored Division stationed in West Germany. He was drafted into the Army on March 24, 1958, at a time when he was one of the most famous people on Earth. His response when asked about his impending service was that he didn't want to be treated any differently than anyone else. A response that is certainly not typical of most celebrities today. The goal of the Arizona Memorial Commission was to raise the $500,000 needed to build the memorial. The original plan was for the funds to come entirely from private donations. By late 1958, due in large part to the pitch made during the television show This Is Your Life, the commission had raised just over $90,000. In 1960, with approximately half the money raised, the construction of the memorial began. The memorial was designed by Honolulu architect Alfred Price. Born in Austria, Price escaped the Nazis and came to the United States. The design of the memorial, according to Price, with its two peaks on each end and saggy center, was meant to, quote, express initial defeat and ultimate victory. The overall effect is one of serenity, end quote. The memorial is made up of three main parts: the entry, assembly room, and the shrine. And on the wall of the shrine are the names of the 1,100 plus men who were killed on the Arizona. And those who survived the attack had the privilege to have their ashes interred within the Arizona by the U.S. Navy divers. And on December 7th, 2019, Lauren Bruner became the 44th and last surviving member of the USS Arizona to be interned. Now, despite having raised half of the $500,000 by 1960, fundraising had begun to stall. It needed a spark to get things moving again. The Honolulu Star Advertiser editor, George Chaplin, a World War II veteran, decided to take action. He wrote a letter to 1,500 newspaper editors from around the country, asking them to in turn write and publish something to try to get people to join in the effort to get the memorial built. The editor of the now defunct Los Angeles Examiner published an editorial in his paper outlining the efforts of the Memorial Commission and asking for the public's help. Colonel Tom Parker saw the editorial and was moved by it. And since he was the manager of the biggest name in the music industry, Elvis Presley, he set out to help. Colonel Parker adopted the title of colonel as an honorary distinction bestowed upon him by Jimmy Davis, the governor of Louisiana in 1948. And although not a colonel in the military, he did serve in the United States Army with the 64th Coast Artillery stationed at Fort Shafter in Hawaii. It was his connection to Hawaii, the military, and his belief in the cause that prompted him to contact George Chaplin. And Parker told Chaplin that he and Elvis had discussed the matter and that Elvis was enthusiastic about holding a benefit concert in Hawaii to help the Arizona Memorial Project get back on track. Elvis Presley, who was discharged from the active duty Army in March of 1960, had a deep and lasting connection to Hawaii. He first visited in 1957 and held his first concerts on Oahu at Honolulu Stadium and Schofield Army Barracks. And as fate would have it, at about the same time that Colonel Parker saw the editorial in the newspaper, Elvis was already planning to go to Hawaii to begin filming the movie Blue Hawaii. He would eventually film 2 more movies there, Girls, 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 and Paradise Hawaiian Style. The concert was scheduled for March 25, 1961, and was to be held at Pearl Harbor's Block Arena. This was the very same venue that hosted the Navy's Battle of the Music, which pitted several bands from each of the battleships stationed at Pearl. The competition was held in November and December of 1941, with the last being the night before the attacks on Pearl Harbor. Now here's where I got chills down my spine. The USS Arizona had a band that competed that consisted of 21 members. The following morning, all 21 were killed. When tickets went on sale, prices varied from $3 to $100. And Elvis purchased the very first ticket along with 30 additional. And since this was a fundraiser, everybody had to buy tickets, even the performers. In addition to Elvis Presley, Minnie Pearl, the Jordanaires, and a local comedian, Sterling Mossman, were set to perform at the now sold-out show. On the morning of the 25th of March, Elvis boarded Pan Am Flight 817 from Los Angeles and flew to Hawaii, where he was greeted by over 3,000 screaming fans. And prior to the show, Elvis gave a press conference and then headed to the venue. And in attendance were some who had witnessed the attack, now nearly 20 years ago. And despite the passage of almost 2 decades, the memories of that fateful morning were still vivid in their minds. The atmosphere inside Block Arena was electric, as might be expected. The king of rock and roll was in the house and back on stage only a year after getting out of the Army. This was an important and historic event, with the benefactor being the memory of those 1,177 lost souls from the Arizona. According to one reporter, the roar of the crowd was so loud you could hardly hear Elvis. And Elvis himself said that since it had been so long since he had performed, he had forgotten some of the words to his songs. He went on to say that it didn't matter, the crowd couldn't hear him anyway. By the time Elvis had left the building, the benefit concert had raised over $60,000 for the Arizona Memorial. It also served to increase the public's awareness of the cause, which resulted in additional funds being raised. Led by United States Congressman Daniel Inouye, and with the help of Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy, Congress provided the last $150,000 to reach the commission's fundraising goal. Inouye was himself a World War II veteran and recipient of the Medal of Honor. The USS Arizona Memorial was completed in 1962 and was established on May 30th of the same year. It is the most visited tourist spot in Hawaii, attracting visitors from all over the world. After its completion, each time Elvis performed in Hawaii, he would visit the memorial and pay his respects to the lost. And while it took the efforts of many people, it was Elvis who was key to getting the fundraising efforts back on track at a time when interest appeared to be waning. I have been to the Arizona Memorial, and it was an emotional experience. You see the names on the wall and the ship visible through the water with the hint of oil still emanating from the great vessel. It's a powerful tribute. When I do research looking for story ideas, I'm amazed at all the interesting ones that I've never heard of before. Even if you're a history buff like I am, there are so many stories out there that haven't been told, or if they have, not many people have heard of them. Elvis's connection to the USS Arizona is a good example. Another one is the story of German World War II U-boat 505, which currently sits in a museum in Chicago of all places. How it got there is a really cool story. To hear it, click the screen now. And until next time, I'm Dennis Gill for Revealing History.